500 film, television, and stage productions. And do you, out of all of that, do you have a particular role that you just is just real near and dear to your heart?
Gosh, you know what? There's so many. Ashley was certainly very fun to play, but because of the lack of comedy in the show, it wasn't. I think if they had included more of that and made the characters more well-rounded, I would put that right up there. But I would say certainly Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing. There's a couple of ones that you probably never heard of, small films that I did that I, really enjoyed the comedy parts and things. But, yeah, the very favorite role I've ever played, honestly, is a stage production of Cabaret when I played Sally Bowles. And it's one of the times that I really had to work hard because I'm not traditionally a singer. I can sing, but I had to really, really work at it for weeks with the voice coach and all to pull off Cabaret. And we did a very gritty version of it, and it was a big hit, and it was just a blast to do because it had everything. It had the comedy, it had the drama, it had the singing and dancing, and it was just a joy to do it.
Just about everything that a sitcom has, except for the singing and dancing, although they threw that in sometimes, like Glee,
Yeah, exactly. Glee is a great example of a show that has it all. Yeah, and I guarantee you it's very fulfilling as an actor or artist, whatever you call them, to do something that has all of those elements in them. It just is, you feel so nicely balanced.
I was letting Dawn know that she can ask her question next because that's how we keep from talking over each other. But unfortunately, when you said something, it's like, oh, my mouth just went. So go ahead, Dawn. Sorry.
I was just going to, I wanted to talk about your writing because you have written quite a few novels. And, and I just wanted to find out, first of all, if someone is an aspiring writer, what do they do to get into, to get a book published? Suppose they've got a manuscript laying around and they just really don't know what to do.
That's a great question, but things are really changing quickly now. In my particular case, I'd written all my life because I've always loved it, and I finally wrote a book that I felt like, all right, this is something I would like to publish, something I'd like to read. It was my first novel, Loaded. And I just asked some people, does anyone know an agent, a literary agent? And one of the other moms at school said, as a matter of fact, I do. And so she put me in touch with the agent in New York who read the book and said, I can sell this book. I love this book. So I was lucky with that personal connection. Going the traditional route through agents and publishers is getting more and more difficult. Very few people are willing to work on a manuscript these days. They really want things to be pretty much finished off. So unless you're a well-known author, you're probably not going to be able to send, hey, I have an idea for a book. That's probably not going to pick up on that. But now the self-publishing thing is getting big. And so if you have a project that you believe in, you can certainly go online, and there's millions of things that advise. Just type in self-publishing and see what comes up. And there's all kinds of helpful organizations. Melissa Foster, Fostering Success is one that's been really helpful to me. Other authors were super helpful to me, just asking questions, what is an ISBN number? I don't know, and it's the number that identifies the book for the publisher.
Right.
But you don't know that,
Right.
So I find other authors are super giving and helpful. It's not like acting. They're much more generous and embracing.
Well, I found that on your blog, too, that you share with your readers these different ideas and you clue them into what everything means and how to write a sentence a certain way. And I love that you share that with other people.
Oh, great. No, it's really fun to do because, we all get stuck at certain points or there's different things. We all, everyone has a different process, of course. But if somebody has a good writing exercise or an idea, it's, why not share it? It's not like they're going to come up with the same idea you did.
Right.
So.
That's true.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Dawn, you had a question about something on the book?
Yeah. In your book, let's just say, for example, your Callaway Wild series, Loaded, is there any aspect of you and your personal self embedded into the character of the book?
In every character. And absolutely every character has a portion of me. And I think it's the same thing for acting. If you don't find that part of yourself that resonates with that character, then the character isn't true. You're just writing a caricature, a cartoon. So an example I love to give about this is Michelle Stafford. the woman does that crazy-ass character so beautifully, you know, on Y&R. And she enjoys it, and if you talk to her about it, everything that character does is justified to her. Do you know what I mean? That's not who she is personally at all, you know? But that, you sort of have to, we all have all of these aspects. I remember the first time I had to go insane on film. That was really scary. But once I got there, I realized, because it's there, it's lurking in all of us. We all have that possibility. So once you connect,
keep it behind.
Exactly. Once you connect into it and find it, then you can develop that tiny aspect into something big enough for a character, and then, you know, let it go again. But absolutely, of course, with the male stuff, I turn to my husband a lot for advice on, you know, what would you think about this, or how would you? And he's such a very masculine man that I get a really good input on that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
The other thing you wrote in your blog too, which I found like, oh, why did she have to use a spider, please?
Oh, is that one of your fears?
About getting ready for a scene when you were going to, somebody was going to kill you.
Right. Well, that's a Grotowski method where you use something exterior, physical, to create an emotion. And for writers, they can reverse that, and instead of saying the emotion, instead of saying she's really scared, they could say she felt as if a spider were crawling up her spine. You know, so it's kind of a reverse. It works both ways.
That's one of the things I'm most afraid of is spiders, and I'm reading this and going, why do people always do this?
I know. Well, you have to find those things. You know, I was on an audition once.
Are you afraid of spiders then?
No, I'm not really. I'm not afraid of much of anything on its own. I mean, I have a healthy respect for things. Obviously, if there was a spider crawling up my spine, yes, I would get it off. But I don't. I hike so much, and I live in the national forest, and so I deal with, you know, critters on a regular basis. And I've learned not to fear them, but to appreciate them. We have rattlesnakes and all kinds of things like that. So, and we used to freak us out, and now my daughter and I get our rain boots on and a shovel, and we go out there and move it, you know. We take it up into the forest and release it.
Kudos to you and your daughter.
You learn that things aren't there to hurt you. That's not their. They're not. They don't want to hurt you.
No,
they're
not.
Themselves.
But they're just. I don't know.
I hear you. It's the scuttly thing, right?
That, you know. I'm a girly girl, I guess.
Yeah, it's that scuttly eight legs. That's gross. Yeah. I know.
Now, I know that you and your husband also help with plays at your children's schools, and I find that amazing.
Right.
That you give back.
I'm very impressed. Well, the entire community, well, it's not, it isn't really community theater, it is actually professional theater, but there is a community of theater and of acting that my husband has for 20 years. He's had the Knightsbridge Theater. And I think we figured out one time that something like 10,000 people, actors, directors, set designers, etc., had come through there and gone on, learned things and gone on and done other things and progressed. And I just think that's remarkable, you know. And the same is true for the kids. The teacher actually asked us to come and help. We're doing the importance of being earnest. And developing a love of theater and of art and literature in kids is just so rewarding. We often have kids, groups come from schools when we do shows. When we did Much Ado About Nothing recently, we had a couple of groups come, like inner city groups of kids who were, groups of 50, and they were wonderful audiences. And we're so appreciative and had so much fun. And, in fact, they actually did a production later, this one group of kids, and invited some of the actors, and a few of the actors went to see them in their high school production, which I thought was so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is wonderful to be able to do that because, arts in the schools have been cut so severely. And
exactly.
I'm glad to know that you're able to do that with at least your children's schools and throughout your community.
Right.
Now, are either of your daughters into acting?
No, neither one is really interested in it at all. They're both wonderful writers. So Creason's a wonderful artist. They're both very creative. But they don't really have, the acting bug, as it were. Maybe they've just been around it too much.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's going to go one way or the other then. Either they're going to want to do what Mom does or they're not going to want to do it because they see how it takes them away.
And you have to remember they've grown up visiting sets and, from both me and Ron. So, they see the reality of it, not that finished, glamorous product.
Right.
You know, they know what it is to be stuck on location in a hotel room for 3 months with, you know, nobody, your family's not there. And so they know the reality of shooting that. And you're up at 3 a.m. and, you know.
Right.
It's not all red carpet, you know. Yeah.
It's not all glamour.
No, exactly.
I know that you've taken your kids as far as going on trips to learn what else the world has to offer. And you said that your daughters wanted nothing to do with museums, but your oldest daughter wants to be a curator now. Is that something she still thinks about?
Ironic, isn't it?
I know. Is that something she still thinks about doing?
Yes, she is. She is studying art at school. Not she hasn't declared a major yet, but she just took, you know, museum history or whatever at school. But I think once she'd started doing her own art and started to appreciate it, then she developed an interest in not only art, but in the social aspects of art. You know, what's popular in a particular age and why. And it's fascinating. The history of art is fascinating. It's not just the actual finished pieces, you know. And that particular story where I said they didn't want to go to a museum, we had taken them, my current husband and I had taken them to Washington, D.C. for a trip. We took them for a whole, you know, American kind of history trip. And we took them to Washington, D.C. And they had been to the Smithsonian and and we took them to the National Art Gallery. And they literally sat down in the corner and wrapped their sweatshirts around their heads.
Oh, my gosh.
And said they didn't want to see any more. Well, they were considerably younger then. And you do have to be careful not to overload them.
Right.
But one advantage of living in Los Angeles is we do have remarkable resources for art, the Getty, the J. Paul Getty museums, 2 of them, and the Norton Simon. So it's wonderful to be able to take a kid and just go visit for an hour, see a few things, and leave. Don't overload them, you know.
Right.
It really helps. And
thank you for using your children as a guinea pig, so that way you can throw that out there to other parents.
Exactly. Well, isn't that what raising children is? I mean, who really knows what they're doing? We're all winging it.
That is so true. Well, you have been very involved with the Desi Guzman Foundation.
Yes,
and talk a little bit about that, because that is anything that is geared towards children is just so near and dear to my heart.
Right. It's basically when I was on YNR, the gentleman who did most of the set, I can't remember exactly what his job was, but something to do with the set design, Bernie Giesman, came to me, and we were friends, we would talk, and he came to me one day and told me that his daughter had been diagnosed with neuroblastoma, which is an extremely, just really bad form of cancer, and they had given her a 5% chance of survival. And he asked that I would go and visit her at the hospital. And I said, you know, why would she want to, she was 9 years old. I said, why would she want to know? I mean, I'm a soap actress. Who would she care, you know? And he said, it's just a distraction. Well, I went to the hospital and met her and fell in love. She was amazing. The one thing I find over and over is very often these kids that are stricken are really exceptional human beings. Right. They just, I don't know why, they just are. And she became just a real good friend of mine. And against all odds, she survived for 2 years. And went on. She was in the Rose Parade, and, you know, she just was such a loving, giving kid. Well, during that 2-year journey, she and her mom, Ileana, would hear all the other children crying, and they would see children alone at the hospital because the parents had to go take care of other children, or had to go to work so they wouldn't lose their insurance. You know, just a lot of stuff. They saw the needs, you know, that were going on. And so Desi just wanted to help them, but of course they had to sort of focus on her. So when she did pass away, when she was 12, we started, within 8 months, we had the Desi Guzman Foundation up and running. And the idea was to help those children and their families, mostly through City of Hope, because we know, you know, it's easiest if you work with a hospital and they tell you what the needs are and who. We work with the social workers. And we started doing little things, just little things like a child is sick at the hospital and they're in isolation and it's their birthday. And the parents haven't even think about this. So we would show up with, you know, say they like Winnie the Pooh. We'd show up with a birthday party Winnie the Pooh theme, you know. Sometimes parents needed gas money to get their kids to the hospital for treatments. These are things that fall through the cracks. There is no government organization that helps with it. There is the hospital. City of Hope is amazing. They help a lot with the medical expenses, but not those things. How do you eat when your family is there from out of town, you know?
Right.
Or when a parent has to not go to work and you can't make your electrical bill. So these are the kinds of things we help with. And unfortunately, we also help sometimes pay for funerals, which is another huge expense that people are never expecting. So it's a huge range of stuff that we do. And like I said, the stuff that falls through the cracks from it's not covered